And I thought this was going to be a really good opportunity. But I didn't realize that the person that I was talking to was not actually the owner of the car. I bought a P1 a few years ago, and I thought this was going to be the worst, the most ambitious project, and also the most expensive project I had ever had. And that was the case up until I got a call from, it's not even a friend of a friend of a friend. This is like a cold call. And I get a lot of these. I get a lot of emails from people that say, hey, I know of this car. Maybe you're interested in buying it, or maybe you can check out this Facebook marketplace listing. I don't know. There's something about this email that I got. And it was a guy that said, there is in Canada a Porsche 918 Spyder that had been sitting for 10 years. And I said, why has it been sitting for 10 years? He said there was a bit of a fire. And the fire, as I understood it, was pretty all-encompassing. It was a large fire. And what I learned about that car is that it had been in a salvage lot, essentially, because when the car burst into flames, afterwards there was an investigation by Porsche, by the insurance company, and nothing happened to it. It just sat for nearly a decade. Now, I didn't know whether this was real or not. I didn't know whether I should follow up with this claim, but I decided, against my better judgment, that maybe I should check this out because, I got this flooded P1, a fire-damaged Porsche 918 Spyder, part 2 of the Holy Trinity, or the Unholy Trinity. That seems like it's a good fit. So the next question I asked is, how much do you want for it? And the guy said, I don't know, like 400 grand. Okay, so a Porsche 918 Spyder right now, if you were to buy it in good condition, would probably cost you between $1.5 and $2 million. A $400,000 Porsche 918 Spyder would be a good deal. However, it depends on how much is there, what's repairable, and every part on a 918 Spyder is very, very expensive and hard to get. But 400 grand was way more than I had in my bank account, and I didn't feel like getting a $400,000 loan, especially after getting the P1 loan. So I said, you know what? It's worth just checking out if this car is even real. A ticket to Toronto from Orlando was something like $150. So I went one morning, and it was probably 10 below zero. It was so cold. This was in January. And I go to this salvage lot. I meet up with the guy that I met on email, and then he was apparently a broker for another guy, and that was the guy that actually owned the car. Then I met up with these people. We went to the salvage lot, and I finally saw this car. Now, I see a lot of cars in bad condition. I do that all the time. This car was the most unfortunately damaged car I've ever seen in my life. In the front, looked relatively okay. If you stood back about 50 feet and squinted your eyes, it was actually a pretty good looking car. It did have some damage in the front, and yeah, there were some nicks and scratches, but nothing to write home about. Right about the halfway point of that car is where things got bad. So everything from essentially the seats back, which is the engine, the transmission, the hybrid drive assembly, the battery, the rear subframe, the spoiler, everything back there was completely burnt. I mean, this was burned beyond recognition. It was carbon fiber that had unraveled itself. All the epoxy had melted away. It was just free strands of carbon fiber that you could flap around. There was still a lot of soot on it. Everything had been taken apart. So the exhaust that was on top of the car, that was taken apart. It was just kind of sitting on it. It looked like a lot of the bodywork had melted. And I don't know if you know, but carbon fiber doesn't exactly melt. Carbon fiber, it is a composite material. So it has a carbon fiber weave, like there's a little lattice structure, and then there's epoxy on top. And that sandwiched together gives it its strength. So when the epoxy leaves, then you just have that lattice structure and it's just wavy. It loses all of its strength. So carbon fiber was done. It had aluminum that had melted. Part of the wheel had melted. The suspension had melted, and everything in the back was essentially unusable. So from where I was standing, I thought okay, well, there's not $400,000 worth of anything here because number one, if a person has a 918 Spider and they want spare parts, let's say I get this just as a parts car and I wanted to sell the parts off. Who am I going to sell this to? This is a used car, and Porsche still make parts for this car. So why wouldn't a person with a $2 million car just go to the Porsche dealer and buy the parts? So it didn't make any sense from that standpoint. And then I thought, well, if I'm going to be rebuilding this car, then why would I get this car? Because it's already 400 grand. If I'm pricing everything out, I know that the engine is $250,000. The battery is about $100,000. The transmission is $130,000, and then the rear carrier, the rear subframe, which is also made out of carbon fiber, that's about $180,000. So just in the big parts alone, that's the better part of $1 million. If I add that to $400,000, I could have just bought one in the first place. Also, I don't have that kind of money, so this was all working against me. But what I thought was I was going to go up to Toronto and then just make a video about this car that I didn't think I would ever buy. But look at this, everyone. It's a crazy 918 Spider. You guys should definitely see this $2 million car that is now worthless. And I saw the car and my gears started turning. And I felt the same way when I saw the P1 for the first time. And I started thinking of ways that I could make this work. And a little voice came into my head, and it sounded exactly like Ed Bolian. And Ed is a shrewd negotiator, and he said, you should not pay $400,000 for this car because there's nothing here. So I countered smack dab in the middle at 80. So I feel like that was a good counter because we were in a market of 0 people. I was the only person there, and I was going to be the only person there. So they said, well, we can't take 80. I thought, okay, well, what can you take? So they went back down to 300, and I said, okay, well, at least we're moving in the right direction. So that's $100,000 off my original ask. I said, I can't do 300, I can do 80. So they went down again, and we went back and forth for a bit. I think we settled somewhere on the $100,000 to $125,000, which was a lot of money, but $125,000 for essentially a $2 million car now starts making a little bit more sense. And I thought this was going to be a really good opportunity, but I didn't realize that the person that I was talking to was not actually the owner of the car. So I had spent the entire day with a person that said that he was the owner of the car. Little did I know, the actual owner of the car was the owner of the salvage lot. And then he reached out to me. So I had to do that negotiation process all over again. And it was only on the way back to the airport from me seeing this car for the first time that I could negotiate a price on this car. And we reached a price, and it was $145,000. And I think for 145 grand, you could do a lot worse for a 918 Spider. What's interesting is that I still didn't really know what the parts availability was like, but I felt like just for this price, I could essentially recoup my losses if I had to sell this thing. And also, it would be one hell of a story. What I did was I waited for springtime to arrive because I wasn't going to go up to Canada. Honestly, I don't know, why do people live in Canada when it's that cold? I waited for springtime to arrive so I could have the car shipped back home because it's in Canada, has to go back to Florida. That's where I live. So a funny thing happened in between those two dates, and that is, well, the world kind of went crazy because of the tariffs. Tariffs, especially between US and Canada. So now, instead of me being able to bring whatever it was from Canada to the US, now there was a 25% tariff on top of that. So instead of this being $145,000, now it would have tacked on another $30,000, $40,000, depending on how they would have classified this, because Porsche is not made in America, it's made in Germany, so that would have been subject to tariffs. What I learned when I actually went to get the car several months later is that if you bring a car from Canada to the US, you are subject to tariffs depending on where it's made. However, if that car is taken apart, you take the engine out, you take the drivetrain out or the subframes, and you basically split the car in half. Now the car is parts, and these are tariffed differently. I didn't have to pay the full tariff. I still had to pay something, but it wasn't this crazy 25% because now it's just like used parts. And essentially, this is what the car was. So I went up to where the car was. I got it from the salvage yard and I took it to my friends at Vibrant Performance. They graciously let me borrow their shop for essentially the long weekend. It was Canada Day. It was Canada Day. I remember because it sounded fake. I borrowed their shop for a few days. Me and my friend Rich Rebuilds, that is his actual name, he came down and then we took this car apart. We cleft it in twain. We took the engine, which was in the back, and we just separated it from the front and we put it on different pallets. My idea was that I was going to take these pallets and then send them separately so then I wouldn't have to be subject to specific tariffs. And I'm not trying to evade anything. This is absolutely within the law. And if you look at this car, it is a parts car. So I was doing everything I could to make sure I didn't have to pay another $30,000, $40,000. So over the next several weeks and months, I got parts of this car into the country and all of them successfully. And thankfully, they're at my shop. And the first major part that I got was the rear subframe, the big charred carbon fiber subframe that housed the engine transmission and the hybrid drive assembly. I have this thing where I'm like really optimistic about things where I probably shouldn't be. Now, it is a flaw, but I feel like sometimes it's of great benefit to me. Not in this case, though, because I had to remove the engine from the subframe, and this was the hottest part of the car. Now, the way that the fire started was, it was a fuel fire. So the previous owner, he was fueling up the car, and somehow, fuel got from the fuel filler into the exhaust. The exhaust is on the top in that car, and he'd been driving the car, so the exhaust was very hot. Fuel goes in hot exhaust, auto ignites, and then the car just goes up at a fuel station. So as you can imagine, it is a big deal. You don't want a fuel station to explode. He tried to put the car out with a fire extinguisher or something, but obviously it just was too big. So the fire department did put the fire out, but the car was gone. Like the back end of the car was gone. So this was the part of the car that I got, and I was taking everything apart. And I thought that the engine was so like encased in everything. It had like carbon fiber and wiring and plastic. And I was like, the core engine, it's going to be fine. Because that engine, it's a 4.6 liter naturally aspirated engine, doesn't have any turbos. It's very, very simple. I feel like because the metal wasn't melted or anything like that, I mean, the coil packs were still sort of on there. The carbon fiber hadn't delaminated. I thought it was going to be okay. I just have to take off some fittings, some hoses, some plastic, maybe put in a new wiring harness and maybe some sensors, and then it should be good to go. What happened was I was taking this entire thing apart. It has two intake manifolds, one on the left and one on the right. It's actually a really race-derived design. I took one of the intake manifolds out, and it was full of water. And this car had been sitting for 10 years. So with standing water there, I go, oh, this is not good. So I look into one of the intakes and you can see where the valves are, and the valve was just, it looked like it was on the Titanic. It looked like it was just completely corroded, and it looked more saltwater damage than the P1 engine did. And I put a borescope into the cylinder so I could see what the cylinder actually had inside of it, and it looked to be the worst, most damaged engine I'd ever seen. So apparently what happened was the fire retardant, when they put this fire out, this massive fire, they had to use a lot of fire retardant. And what fire retardant does is essentially takes out all the oxygen from somewhere. And it is also incredibly corrosive. So when it got onto the car, I think it leaked down into the intakes, went into the intake manifold, and then went into the open cylinder. The car wasn't running or anything, but when the cylinder was filled with that fire retardant, it started to congeal and it mixed with the cylinder liner, which was this bespoke plasma coating, because of course it was, and it ate away at the cylinder liner, it ate away at the aluminum underneath it, and then it just kind of stayed there for 10 years, and it turned into mud. It literally looked like mud. It looked like an avocado that had been just left in a dumpster for 3 months. It was disgusting. And when I looked in this engine and I saw this, I knew that this needed a full rebuild. So that was a bad day, because one of these engines is $250,000. And I didn't have $250,000. So I had to figure out how to fix this. So the only way I can do this is by seeing what the actual damage was. So I took it upon myself to take every single nut and bolt off of this very bespoke, very expensive Porsche engine and try to see if I could fix it myself. At this point, when we're recording, I haven't actually fixed it, but I think I have found a solution. And it's a company that I reached out to, and they said that they could fix it for not much money. They've done it before, not on a 918, but how different could it be? So right now I have all my fingers crossed, all my toes, that we can take this engine and get it fixed and then get it put back together so it can finally be in this 918 Spider that I'm rebuilding. Now that is only one part of a big rebuild. But the good part about this is that unlike the P1, this is gonna stay hybrid, and I'm gonna make this just a bone stock example because I can't afford to do anything else.
I'm at the Lars Anderson Auto Museum, home of America's oldest car collection, and they are holding a sweepstakes where one of you is going to win this Porsche 992. You can enter at the link in the description below, and you will have an amazing car, but much more importantly, you'll be helping keep America's car culture alive. The Lars Anderson Auto Museum is the hub of New England car culture, and that is why every week here on the grounds, there's something amazing happening. So if you're in the Boston area, come say hey, and either way, enter to win this thing because it's awesome.